You often hear people say that the legacy media is lying to you and misinforming you and not giving you the full picture. I think it's actually much worse than that. My suspicion is that the way this mechanism is working is that people in legacy media are usually not filtering out consciously by trying to deceive you. It's not that they're trying to lie to you, that they know how reality is, but are not telling you about reality and giving you a false picture of reality. I think it's much, much worse than that. It's not because they have a pressure from above that somebody is threatening them, somebody is forcing them, somebody is funneling money into a certain direction and forcing people to say things that they don't actually want to say. I think the filtering mechanism in legacy media mostly happens on the level of culture. So, culture generally is the way you do things. When you say that you're stepping into a different culture, when you're crossing a boundary, a physical boundary, what you usually mean, I think, is that you're saying we do things differently here. You're still part of the same culture as long as you do things in a similar enough way. But the moment people interpret reality in significantly enough different ways, the moment you do things differently, you can speak about being entering a new culture. And it's usually confusing. The moment you do that, you don't know how things are done, right? So you have all these actions that people perform, but you don't know what they mean, right? Because they're just visible to you. They're like visible words, but you don't know the meaning of those words. For understanding the meaning of those words, you would have to participate in the culture. Um, that's what we, I think, usually mean by culture. And culture, the way things we do things, is the thing that usually runs even media organizations. So that's the main filter. The main filter is not somebody telling you what to say and how to speak, but the main filter is being participating in the culture and learning how you do things and how you don't do things. This is no different in media companies than it is in culture in general. Culture serves many purposes, one of which is, of course, to organize people's minds around shared concerns. Without culture, you couldn't do that. And this is what we are seeing happening today. When you lose a cultural shared space, people fragment into individuals, into tribes. The moment people don't really agree on how you do things, the moment they stop agreeing on what inspires you, what disgusts you, what you find worth striving for, the moment you start disagreeing on those things, they're much more foundational than truth, actually, because they're literally something that's embodied. That's stuff that we experience emotional and embodied reactions to, like for example disgust. The moment we don't agree on those issues, we can't get along as collectives, and we need boundaries between each other. Otherwise, we just yeah. When we bump into each other as collectives, that's usually trouble. I mean, we know what happens. And the way I believe it actually works in media houses is very similar to how it works everywhere else. I mean, why would it be different than any other social space? I think people are mostly driven by their intuitions and their sense of a shared culture and what you do from within that culture. So when people are listening to Trump speak, I think the first thing that kicks in is not, okay, let's get the facts on the table and see which facts are most worthy of reporting. That's not what you do. What you do is to have a healthy sense for how you do things and how you don't do things. And when you listen to Trump, you can't but usually have a very polarized reaction to that. You either will go totally with it or you will find it disgusting. And this is a reaction that you often get. I mean, I myself can see my priming when I'm listening to Trump. I feel like every second sentence is just embarrassing or disgusting. These are not neutral reactions. These are reactions that are telling you the way this person is putting together words and sentences. It's something that goes deeply against my sense of culture and my sense of how you do things. My sense of, for example, how you do things is dialogical. That you assume a position from where you take in the other person's perspective and try to find some kind of consensual middle ground. When you break against that, I will feel disgusted. I will feel that a very foundational norm to my existence has been broken against. And Trump is king when it comes to that. I mean, he's genius level capable of making you feel like he's trampling your identity. You can't listen to him almost in a neutral way, in a factual way. It's just almost impossible. And I think this is a major driving factor for how people are actually interpreting information, because everything that comes to the table of facts has already been pre-filtered by this cultural assumption of how you do things and how you don't. The cultural filter is, I think, the most foundational filter. Nothing that goes through that is actually a fact independently of that cultural level. The stuff has always to go first through the cultural filter, and then you can make decisions about what's worth being reported, and then compare perspectives. And I think most likely this is how it works in media companies. And this is much worse than people lying to you. And this is much worse than people being forced to say things that are not true. And it also wouldn't change if media companies started telling you stories that you want to hear from them. It foundationally means that you don't share the same culture with the people in those media houses. It simply means, as a whole, we are fracturing culturally, and we don't feel the same things are embarrassing or disgusting as the people who are reporting on those things. We don't share the same culture. And by the way, this is also how it works in more authoritarian societies. They also do the main filtering through culture, through how you do things here in our space. This is something that is relatively low energy consumption, so you don't have to put a lot of energy from the top into the whole thing, but it's self-sustaining and self-running. That's something that the Soviet Union had to figure out the hard way, that the idea of constantly putting energy into a system and trying it to actually guide it into the direction you want to guide it. So this sense of absolute control is not efficient. It doesn't work. It actually falls apart because it drains you. You can't pay attention to enough different systems and maintain the direction of all of those at the same time. But what works, on the other hand, is if you give these systems a relative autonomy. So you just give the direction, but then those systems themselves create their own culture, their own way of speaking, their own way of doing things. That is generated by a few opinion leaders and people who put a lot of energy into that. But those people are relatively independent from you who are at the top. The only thing you have to really just pay attention to is that they go in the right direction, that they have the right telos that they're aiming at. But the rest they will figure out themselves. And they will feel creative while doing it. They will feel like free. They feel like they have full freedom to come up with any kind of interpretation, any kind of idea, as long as it's within certain boundaries that are already pre-given. And you don't have to maintain the thing. It's self-running, but because it is its own cultural unit. And this is what we see relatively authoritarian societies doing as well. They're doing their filtering also, not mainly through threats of violence and through money funneling. I mean, those are big things, but not the main thing. The main thing is still culture. Even in authoritarian societies, the main filter for information is culture. You generate a specific form of culture that then self-maintains itself. And again, when people are reacting to legacy media and saying they're lying to us, I think they don't see the depth of the actual problem. The problem is that we're not sharing a shared world anymore. We're not sharing a shared cultural space anymore. We're not reacting with disgust at the same things that we observe. We interpret them in different ways. We interpret them to mean different ways. And if it was just about people lying to you, the problem will be solved the moment you change the people with other people, and those people just telling you the truth, right? But this problem won't be solved in this way. I'm not sure we actually know what to do. I'm not sure we've been in such a similar situation as a culture where the culture itself is fragmented to such a significant degree that there is no mending it. There is not one single fact that would change the whole picture. There is not one single action. I mean, the big promise that came from the right, of course, in the past few years was, oh, if you just let us in power, we'll fix everything. Nothing was fixed. If you just exchange all the people at the top with other people, people who are actually much more tribal in their thinking and have done far less to actually deserve their positions of power by having proved themselves to be able to work with people of relative diversity. If you put such people in power, I mean, what changes? You just get a stronger attempt at stratifying society, a much more aggressive form, much more authoritarian form of top-down pressure to move culture into a certain direction and create order. But this is not really convincing the other half of the population, is it? It's making it actually much worse because they feel excluded. They don't feel that their concerns are being integrated. They don't feel like their worldview is being integrated into the direction that the entire country is going. And that's the trouble we're facing. It's not just a problem of information, but it's a problem of a fracturing culture that I don't think really have good ideas how to mend. And the way we historically did the mending is through war. Yeah, so it kind of has to all fall apart. We have to regress to step one, stage one. Then authoritarians will create relative order within their chaos. There will be attractor points, which will create enough shared culture for social units to actually exist in such a fractured space. And then you will do the rebuilding. So the moment you have more relative stability, people will feel free again to come up with counter narratives. They will feel secure again to come up with counter narratives and counter cultures, if you want. And the cycle repeats itself. I mean, this is, I think, the way we've usually been doing it as human beings. And I think we had hoped to have broken out of it, but I'm not sure we have. I'm not sure we will be capable to mend this. But in any case, I don't think it's just a matter of people not telling you the truth. I think it's much, much worse. And the moment you then own the legacy media, in other words, the new legacy media, like Joe Rogan right now, because he's basically in the position of the traditional legacy media. I mean, he has the reach that I think outdoes even the biggest media companies. They will face the exactly same problem that the legacy media did back in the day, that he won't be able to hold together in a narrative. And half of the population will find his stuff not only dishonest and false, but disgusting. Because they won't be sharing his culture. They won't be sharing the way he does things with him. So he won't be able to hold the whole thing together either. He will be accused of exactly the same things that traditional legacy media has been accused of, even though he has much more time to speak about those issues. I mean, he can speak for 3 hours on an issue, right? That's nothing. I mean, if you compare that to the usual airtime that you have on CNN, he has so much more time, and yet he won't be able to mend it. The culture will still fragment and further fall apart.